Hi there, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I am incredibly excited, as usual, when I talk to this guest, to speak with Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm out of Worcester. She's incredibly knowledgeable. And today we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic, very relevant in this day and age, and that is guardianships. And welcome to you, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. So, we're going to start off like we always do. What is a guardianship?
A guardianship is essentially where a third party is going to step in and take control or custody of your child. So you have a minor child that is not capable of taking care of themselves, and you have parents that have some kind of issues going on where they're not able to take care of the child at a particular time. An adult guardian is going to step in to take care of them on a day-to-day basis.
That sounds like a scary situation. What would be some of the reasons for guardianship?
There could be a gazillion reasons. Obviously, the most common is, you have one parent that dies and the other parent has never been a parent, and they're going, oh my God, what am I supposed to do with this kid? That's kind of one scenario. You have another issue where you're going to have one or both parents not in the best situation, whether it be homelessness, drugs, abusive relationships, things of that nature. You may have DCF get involved, where DCF is going, yeah, neither one of your parents are doing the right thing right now. You need more help, or you need parenting classes or stuff of that nature. Sometimes it's just medical. We had a case where, unfortunately, a woman went into a coma. So obviously she wasn't capable of taking care of the child. Dad wasn't around. So unfortunately, somebody else had to step in, take over at that point in time. And again, it was just a brief period of time, but obviously, those are the situations that are most common, where somebody's going to come in and go, hey, we need to take care of this child while the parents are unable to do so.
It sounds like there's not a lot of good reasons for this to happen. And my next question was going to be, how long do guardianships last? It sounds to me like it's going to be different times, but how do they even decide?
So when you go in for guardianship, you're immediately going to request a temporary guardianship. The temporary is only going to remain in place up to 90 days. So they're going to look at it based off of what is happening in your particular circumstances. The court only has the authority to do it for 90 days. After 90 days, we'll have another review hearing. We'll look at the facts at that time, make a determination, see again if we need to continue it for another 90 days, or if, again, if both parties objected, if parents are saying okay with it, what are their situations, what are they looking for. But again, the court is going to continue it for 90 days and 90 days and 90 days and 90 days until such time that either both parties, both parents consent, and or there's a trial and the judge makes a final determination.
Wow, that's amazing. So can you give us an example of what are some of the terms of a guardianship? I wouldn't even know the first thing about how to become a guardian or what is expected.
Well, the biggest term is obviously the person that wants to be guardian has to be over the age of 18. That's an easy one to overcome. But then we have the other things of what does their home life situation look like? Do they have the capability of doing that? Obviously, your Corey or Carrie is going to be run to make sure that you don't have any criminal background. DCF will be called to make sure if you have any DCF involvement and what that history looks like. So those are just the common things that we're going to address. Then obviously we have to address, is this person capable of taking care of this child? Unfortunately, you know what? People want to step in, but they don't have the housing situation stabilized. They just know that, hey, we don't want this kid to go to DCF custody. Oh my God. But we're the only family member. So now what do? We'll just take her. Okay, great. But you live in a studio apartment and you're now taking 3 kids in. Where are you going to put them? Oh, I didn't think about that. So again, we have to look at big picture. What does that home life look like? And of course, maybe it's the grandparents that are more stable, they're older, hopefully they have their own home, or they're at least, renting a house or something of the nature that they have the capability. Oh yeah, we're going to put them in Susie's room. She was lived there for the rest of her life. So yeah, we'll just take the grandkids now. So again, we're going to look at those circumstances. The court's going to look at, again, what is their relationship? Did Susie actually know the grandparents, or are we going with complete strangers? That's something that we're going to consider. So there's a lot of factors that the court's going to look at to make a determination as to what we're going to include, when we're going to include it, how we're going to include it. And again, it's going to follow that 90-day track for at least a period of time until we can get all of that information and the court is satisfied that at least these people are suitable to be guardians.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that they have it sounds like a pretty thorough process. They're checking backgrounds, they're checking, where they're going to live, how they're going to be treated. Hopefully they can kind of see what the whole picture will be from the work they're doing before they place them. But I mean, at this point, does this mean that the parents are losing all their rights to the child?
No, it doesn't. It just means that, again, depending on the circumstances, the parent needs help. We all need help at some point in time. Again, unfortunately, maybe it is a drug issue and you need to go to rehab and you need to get yourself on track and you need to get clean. Sometimes it's just, hey, I lost my job. We're homeless. We're out on the street. Nobody wants to take me in. I can't find something. And for whatever reason, the homeless shelters are over capacity, or I didn't want to go to a homeless shelter, or whatever the case may be. Let's get you back on track. So they do have rights. You do not lose your rights. You still have, you still can have parenting time. You can still, visit your children and have some kind of regular communication with them, whether that be by phone, Skype, FaceTime, in person, any of those things. And that's, again, going to be discussed between you and the judge and the guardian as to what that's going to look like, the frequency, the duration, all of those things. But we're just saying that right now, you're not in a good situation. You need to get out of it. And the best way you can get out of it is making sure that your child is protected so that the child is not taken by DCF. Because if the child's taken by DCF, that's going to be an even longer process to get the child returned to you.
This is a really good question that I have. And if I do say so myself, I hadn't thought of this before, but do the guardians get any type of child support?
Maybe. And again, it depends. If, say, one of the parents that is no longer capable of taking care of the child and that parent was receiving Social Security disability benefits or VA benefits or something of that nature, then yes, that money that they're getting for the benefit of the child as a result of those things certainly is going to come into play, and that guardian is entitled to child support. The same, similar guidelines are attributed. We're obviously not going to say the guardian's income matters, but we're at least going to do a figure based off of the parent's responsibility. Again, if that parent is working, but again, maybe just doesn't have the suitable housing, maybe they're a hoarder, maybe they need to clean up their act in some fashion, but they have income, yes, they're going to be paying child support. Now, obviously, there's other cases where I'm homeless and I have no income. The judge probably isn't going to award it, at least on a temporary basis. When we're asking for a final guardianship and going to trial or those types of things, then obviously the judge may very well include that. But again, we have to look at those circumstances. But yes, the guardian is entitled to get paid. And unfortunately, that's a form of child support, which is the exact same thing as if you were the custodial parent.
So who pays for that?
The parent is going to pay for that. So the parent is going to be making those payments to the guardian. And again, that can go through Department of Revenue, that can go direct deposit, same means that you would have in a custody or divorce case.
That's so interesting. So trying to just understand this a little more through definitions, what does permanent mean in this case?
So permanent is where either the parties agreed that this person was going to have guardianship, or the judge tried the case and said it's going to be a permanent guardianship. Permanent will be defined very clearly on the guardianship paperwork, which means up until the child's 18th birthday. But permanent also doesn't mean permanent. So while I just said, yes, it's up until the 18th birthday, it doesn't mean that you as the parent can't come along and say, hey, things have gotten better. So permanent in the eyes of the court is permanent until such time that somebody does something different.
And hopefully they give you some sort of guidelines for what they need to improve on. If somebody has an addiction problem, they go and they get clean and they've shown that they can go out and support themselves and remain in a good place. I mean, it sounds like they've got some really good ways to tell if the child is going to be safe and happy and in a productive home.
I agree. And I think, one of the things is, again, whether you're filing it as a voluntary and the parents are saying, yes, I know I can't do it right now, I know I need to get my life in order, or we go to trial, the judge or the parties are going to come to an agreement. So there's a level of unfitness, which is simply exactly what it sounds. You are unfit to care for this child for whatever reason. And then the judge will usually articulate what those unfitness levels are. You haven't had a stable job. You have been out on the street. You're putting your child in harm's way in the middle of winter in Massachusetts. You're a drug addict. You've been incarcerated. Whatever those things are, the judge may very well articulate it. Again, if you're doing it voluntarily as a parent, you have wiggle room to just simply say, yes, I can't do it, without saying that level of an unfitness. That's going to come into play and be an important role if and when you ever say, I am fit now, I want to have my children back.
I love that. I mean, it's a sad situation, but at least there's a lot of positives and there's a light at the end of the tunnel for some people. And it's not like it's a completely hopeless, you're never getting your kids back situation, which, I think is great, because as you said, people do need help sometimes, and life is not easy 100% of the time, that is for sure. So when is it possible to get the guardian removed?
Well, again, depends on what's going on. So the guardian can voluntarily remove themselves, saying, I fell down a flight of stairs and I can't do it anymore because now I've got to be in rehab, God forbid. I'm just getting too old. This child's unruly, whatever the case may be. So the guardian can always say, I'm not the appropriate person, and I would suggest, Uncle Steve. Okay, Uncle Steve may or may not come into play, but at least now we have an option. So the guardian isn't held to the permanent thing as well as anyone else. Obviously, either parent can come back and say, hey, I've met the criteria that the court wanted me to do. I did X, Y, and Z. I'm capable of taking care of the children. I'm great now. Look at me. Or again, the easiest way, of course, is guardian and parents talk and they say, yeah, this is perfect. You're doing things. You're right on track. Let's go and have it removed. So obviously, it can be done by any of the people involved at any point in time. But obviously, if the parties do not agree, then we'd have to go into court and the judge would have to make a determination as to whether or not that parent is now capable or that level of unfitness has dissipated by some actions that they've done. So where does that fall in the scheme of things? That's what they're going to look at. Is this person now capable of taking care of these children?
I mean, I think that's great. Do you have any stories or anything you'd like to share, any other information that I didn't ask that you maybe thought of during the question answer period here?
I think, the biggest thing is always going to be, every case is going to be unique. Some cases do really end up in a permanency, a 18-year plus commitment. And, a lot of times when you have those situations, the guardian will continue well beyond their 18th birthday. They're living in your home. They've been living in your home for 18 or whatever amount of years, and their family, whether, their family, i.e. I'm going to call this person my mother, even though they're not, or I'm going to call them my uncle or whatever the case may be, but you have that relationship that continues well beyond 18 years. Obviously, the court can only do up to the 18th birthday, but I think that bond continues for a much longer period of time. I think the other end of that is, again, you know, one of the things is the parents sometimes go, well, I'm going to show them the court orders and I'm going to show them this documentation. Don't do that. These kids don't need to see that. Regardless of whether you believe that the guardian stole your child or not, that's not going to be helpful to your child. The child doesn't need to know that stuff. So, you know, just kind of look at it, listen to it, think about it as a rational human being. I get that emotions get tied up in this, and I get that it's your child and you gave birth. I get it. But guess what? You also get to have this parenting time. You know, the kids get the best of both worlds. They get mom, they may get dad, they, you know, have these guardians that are in place. They have a wealth of family that loves them. And that's what you should be focusing on, is those types of things, because so often they want to focus on, you stole my kid. And again, if we didn't have these problems and we didn't have whatever was going on in our lives, they didn't really do that. The court obviously made a determination that said, right or wrong, there's some issues going on. And I think it's a really hard pill to swallow, and acknowledge that regardless of whatever brought you here, acknowledge it and then grow from it. And I think that's the hardest part that a lot of parents can't do.
Nobody likes to admit when they're wrong, that is for sure. But it is the really strong people that can see that and just really take steps to change things and push things in a positive direction. It doesn't always happen overnight, so you have to have patience. But this has been really great information, Nicole. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us on a Friday afternoon, as usual. We hope everybody watching has a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for Nicole for coming on and being such an amazing guest all the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great weekend, everybody.